Hi everyone, so last video for week 3, this is video 4. Well done to you, you've got to video 4, I'm impressed. It shouldn't be too long as well, should be about 10-12 minutes in length I think. Selfie in Society part 4, this is really about selfie practices and how we enact certain practices of doing selfies, how selfies are an activity, and indeed how therefore self-presentation and self-representation is an activity on social media. If you want to broaden this outwards, okay? So if we think of selfies as their actual media form as a photograph, so I mean we know photos can be altered and carry multiple meanings, but we're still inclined to interpret them as documents of something that is inarguably there and like a testament of history of what is there. So photos have a real power to give a message which is static over time. The technological changes of the past decades have increased the number of photos, in particular everyday snapshots we take. Talked about this in the first year with History of Photography in MS232, have made photos meaningful in streams in addition to when viewed by one. So we're used to the stream of information and being able to see multiple photos of the same object, same person, and have given photos more communicative and interactive meanings, as we can actually comment upon them and even take those images and remake them and remold them in different ways. So we have tools to do that now. We have everyday tools to do that now. So people read a lot into images, and each photo can have multiple social functions which we can to an extent control, like when we delete an unpopular image or make a loved one our profile picture on social media, for example, to convey a particular message. Point here, the photographic form is very, very powerful. It carries weight within society, and there is a form of sort of non-economic capital with photographs, a social capital and a cultural capital with the photographs that we take and use, and especially those that we use to represent ourselves. And we are usually very, very good at interpreting what a good image is for this and what a poor image is for this. But we're not always good. Exhibit 1. Princess Brianna's selfie in the Auschwitz concentration camp with a big beaming smiley face with the huts of Auschwitz-Birkenau in the background. The worst selfie ever, which could be up there. One of the worst selfies ever taken, I would say this one. If the selfie is a performance, it must be performed in a particular manner. And this is not a great performance right here. This is not a question with a definitive answer, but it's something you should think about individually and about the practice of others. How is this being performed? What kind of message is coming across here? What kind of message is this person sending with this image? It's not a great one for me. The context in which this is taken in, saying this person values an image of themselves smiling over, crimes against humanity. Wow. I mean, I've visited a number of concentration camps and I've never taken a photograph of anything. It's least of all myself being there. These are places for, I think, deeply humble, reflection rather than trying to self-present in this way. Now, we can broadly define selfies into socially acceptable and socially unacceptable along the lines of what social cues and social aspects are facilitated by different platforms. A selfie can be socially acceptable on Instagram or not socially acceptable on Instagram. I don't know of any place in the world where this would be socially acceptable. And indeed, okay, it got deleted, and the person, the woman in question, came out and apologized for this image, and you think that would be the end of it, right? You wouldn't see something like this again, and you'd be wrong, because there is in fact a whole culture of taking beaming smiley selfies at Auschwitz-Birkenau. What the hell is wrong with people? Look at this one, the one with the filters down here, with the angel filters. What are you thinking? I mean, that is where, Kat Tiedenberg talks about photos, and, the taking of the image is the beginning point, and then you edit and so on. And, when I talked in the first video about Instagram, was the point, one of the points I made. And these people have edited these images and put filters on to make themselves look good. Holy shit, look at all these morons. Oh my god, the one on the bottom left is so disrespectful. I just cannot even begin. I'm leaving it up there because sometimes you just need to see how moronic. These have all been shared on Instagram. Oh my God, it doesn't even bear thinking about. These have all been shared on Instagram. What are people thinking? Maybe they're not thinking, but these are critically important documents in how we understand these people, right? We don't know these. I hope we don't know. If you do know some of these people, please, next time you see them, please pummel them to death with a manhole cover for me, or at very least, go to your local snooker hall or pub with a pool table, take a sock off, put a couple of balls into a sock, wind it quite tightly, go and visit the person, and then smash them across the face with it, because this is unacceptable behavior and it needs that kind of response, right? These are people who don't understand the social implicitness, the socially implicit cues of taking selfies and performing self-identity. Maybe when I keep on saying about how well nuanced people are and how well they understand the cues and the social the social norms of self-presentation, and maybe I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe this is an epidemic of morons out there and people don't understand. Selfie practices are how we do selfies. The myriad things people do, say, think and feel to create, share, attribute meanings to, understand and interact around selfies. And we've just seen some really classic examples of how not to do selfies, but there are, even in taking those images, there were, some kind of, I don't want to say there was thought going into it, but there was something going on there about, this is a way of doing something which will be good on social media. People say, oh, look, they went to Auschwitz, aren't they lovely people? And it's like, no. Selfie practices include posting, editing, posting, I don't know why I put posing, sorry, editing, posting, saving, sending, deleting, hashtagging, commenting, captioning, liking, and reposting selfies. All of these things are what we call in the practice. One of the practices that should have gone in those images we saw previously was deleting in a big way. And unbelievably, they all still exist and are all out there as well. It's a message that shouldn't be lost on anyone. Once something goes up on social media, you can almost guarantee it. You delete it, but it's never disappearing. Keep that in mind, people. Understanding selfie practices, when we want to understand these things, and of course you guys, many of you are going to be reflectively understanding your practices for your coursework, right? So you always want to look at what activities were involved in the taking of that image, not just in terms of the physical taking of the image, but what was going on around, what things have been used in that. I don't mean that things in a literal sense, but not just clothing and so on, but items around, and how's the meaning of the selfie be constructed with the situation in which you find yourself? What is the relevant context for this, and how can we learn, and what can we learn from unacceptable, Auschwitz ones are ones. People taking selfies at funerals. What the holy shit? People taking images of funerals and sharing them on social media. Go away. What is going on? I do actually see things like this. What can we learn from these, and how do we learn from them, and how do we reflect on them, and how does our reflection on these things inform the way that we self-present? We don't want to be the smiley idiots at Auschwitz who don't understand the context of what they're doing. And we take that in and we reflect on it, and that informs us as to what is Instagrammable and what isn't Instagrammable, for example. Kat Tiedenberg, in her book on selfies and selfie culture, gives us a very good way of understanding selfie practices. Selfie practices have social functions, and they're closely linked to the social functions. So here, the importance is on what is being done, what the intention of that action is, and what is being felt by the person as they are doing it. The practice of performing underpins thinking, interacting, expressing with, and working with selfies. And this diagram that's taken from Kat's book is a really good example of what it means. If we work from left to right on the image, we have a performance to present ourselves and be present at a particular place. We can break that down into thinking, interacting, feeling, expressing, and doing a particular form of work. And through those combinations, what is bridged here, the performance and the becoming and belonging to, by belonging here, what we're referring to is how we take ownership of our identity through these practices. If you like, those two big brackets, basically they join themselves through these practices and how we represent them. So there is a link between performance, just as Goffman argued. There is always a link between what we perform and how we perform visually in this form of visual communication, the selfie, and what underpins our identity in particular ways. But this will change over time across these parameters, how we think, how we interact with others, how we feel about things, how we express ourselves and how we express others, and how we work, and how we might sort of put in effort to maintain a brand of ourselves in some ways. As these things change over time, so will the relationship between becoming and belonging and performance, and therefore the content and the sort of way that we self-represent over time will change as well. So if looking forward to assignment 2, you may want, I've given you the page reference here. You may want to look at this and think about how this will critically inform your observations. In terms of how we can think of doing selfies, and in doing self-presentation in any kind of way, we can think of doing selfies as self-presentation tools to think with, as interactions, as a way to feel, and as a particular form of work. Now, I'm hoping this works. I'm going to disappear for a second.
Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jessica, and today's video is going to be all about how I take my pictures for Instagram and edit them. So if you want to see how I do that, just keep watching. So I'm actually at my sister's apartment right now, so that's why the setting is a little different, and I'm using natural daylight. If the lighting's in and out, yeah, just know that's why. So first, for taking selfies, it's all about the angles and the lighting. So you just have to find like your good side. Like, this is my good side, that's why I always film on this side. Like, I don't like this side, no, it's a no, but this side is okay. And then for lighting, I like to use natural daylight. Even after I got lighting equipment for my videos, I still use natural daylight because it's just the best. Like, I mean, you could, if you got enough lighting equipment, you could probably fake natural daylight, but I mean, that's a lot. Like, that's a lot of soft boxes, like umbrella lights, ring lights, and stuff like that. So I don't have a budget, so I just use natural daylight. It's the best. So yeah. When you're taking selfies, try to stay in the center of the frame, because the way the lens is shaped is it widens out the edges. So that's why if you've ever taken a group photo and you're on the edge, it widens you out. Like, it makes your face look way wider, and like even your body, like everything looks like, it just looks unrealistically wide, and that's because the lens slims everything in the center down and widens everything on the outside. And also, when you're taking pictures in daylight, like sometimes it gets overexposed on a certain area, like on your shirt or something. The brightest area, it'll just get like overexposed and it'll be like completely white. So what I do when that happens is
Okay. I couldn't actually go any further with this because I'm kind of losing the will to live. But the truth of the matter is that that woman is not only, making me want to pray that, I get struck down by lightning immediately. She's indicating that actually self-presentation is work. It is labor. It is labor intensive. I had a fabulous project a couple of years ago from a student who used a sort of a time delay video she took of herself getting ready to take a selfie. The video was about 12 minutes long, and that was sped up. Right, this was so the actual process of it, I think, was about 36 minutes, and she overlaid that with her script, which was about her practices of self-presentation on different forms of social media, in particular on Instagram, and how she goes to an incredible amount of effort. This is somebody who had over 800 self-representational images on her Instagram reel, and every one involved an immense amount of effort, of taking, of deleting, of going into huge minutiae of what that individual image looked at. A huge amount of work basically going into self-representation over time, and within that amount of work, there's a huge amount of complexity. Selfies are incredibly complex. They matter because we invest huge amounts into our self-presentation and our self-presentation strategies. And this is a way of visually perfecting that self-presentation in particular ways. So therefore, we put a huge amount of effort into it. Selfies can make us feel bad, and that can be expression of feeling bad. Selfies can convey a sense of authenticity, or can be seen as fake. It can be high quality or low quality, and that's very important. But selfies carry and are used as a way of accruing social capital, and therefore the perception of quality is critical. They're the base of a moral panic, and they are very important in making us feel who we are in society. So why do they? Oh. Sorry, guys. I just skipped over a slide, so let me go back a second. Sorry about that, ghost in the machine. So why are selfies important? So selfies can be seen as important in developing a sense of ownership and of ourselves and self-efficacy over our own identities. Exercising this kind of agency is critically important, not just in contemporary life. It's always been important in anyone's life, but in terms of aspects of mental health, for example, having a sense of agency of our own existence is incredibly important. We can feel seen, be positively valued, and control how we are seen and by whom at different times. So this is why these practices of self-presentation that we have visually across social media are incredibly important. Even if you're like me and you don't exercise them, even that non-exercising is immensely important. So when I am seen, and is how and when I want to be seen, and is positively valued, I'm feeling good. Yeah, that's amazing. And so therefore, our visual self-representations of ourselves on social media are incredibly important. These are a form of empowerment, right? At the core, empowerment is the ability to act in particular ways that we choose. And feeling empowered and being empowered are not necessarily the same thing. We can feel empowered and not actually be empowered, and we can be empowered and not act on it. But when we find that the sweet spot, when we are feeling empowered and we are acting empowered, therefore we are controlling our own self-presentation strategies, and therefore we have control over the index of our identity to others. That is an empowering moment for us, and one can argue that selfies are empowering due to the control of image creation and sharing. However, those images could be the result of internalizing the norms of the different systems as well. So we have to be careful. If we characterize our practices of self-presentation as empowering, we do have to be careful about thinking about, okay, so what platform is it on? How are we copying codes from others, for example? This is important. This issue is critically important in understanding the selfie as a form of self-expression. The reproduction of particular codes in selfies implies that there is not a great deal of empowerment in selfies themselves. However, the ability to reproduce codes and choose who to share with them and when and how long, this is where the title of the lecture comes back into play: Selfie and Society. So in conclusion, selfies are a complex form of visual culture. They're not simplistic, and social media culture used to communicate myriad of meanings. Selfies act as a form, act in sophisticated ways to aid our self-presentation, which is critically important in the contemporary age. No two selfies are equal. They're carriers and builders of different types of social capital, each and every one. Selfie can be seen as empowering, and selfies are always an act and a performance, but selfies are also part of a wider culture of visual communication where particular representations, especially of women, can be very problematic, and the control that we are afforded by social networks and digital media sits in tension with the perception of the selfie itself. You're going to have to unpack why you selfie, how you selfie, for whom you selfie. That is so important, and for what impact you selfie if you're going to go and analyze this sort of stuff in your project. But if you do, I will say, projects based on this kind of analysis of social media usage and behavior, invariably they're interesting and they do really well, because people really get into their self-presentation strategies in a big way, and you can feel that in the project. When people are engaged in that way, it really does come across. So if you are doing this work, I look forward to looking at it. The stuff on self-presentation that I've talked about, Goffman and so on, that's going to be useful for everyone. Even if you're not talking about Instagram or Snapchat or anything like that, or Facebook or TikTok, but then all of this stuff is equally applicable to TikTok, right? Stuff on self-presentation is going to be very useful. Okay, that's the end of this lecture. Thank you guys for listening.